there's going to be an increased trust as we go along, as algorithms become better, become more accurate, and frankly, sheer familiarity will increase acceptance. The question here is really reliance. How much can you rely on the insights, the outputs of the algorithms? And that's where it becomes a bit tricky. There are two levels. One is a more basic and simple level. When you run a lot of statistics and you get some insights, does the correlation make sense, or is this just a fluke shot? What does it mean when you say the lift will fail every Tuesday? Is that a real correlation, or it just happens to be that way? So that's just one level. That's a most basic level. The second is really in terms of if you project it forward, right? When when artificial intelligence begin not just to make insights, but to have inference, to start learning and actually creating new rules for you. That's where it becomes scary, because currently, at least from what we understand, there's a lot of inputs that machine learning would not be able to incorporate. Now, how do you actually, and if you think of it as tabula rasa, empty piece of paper, we have an example of Microsoft Tay, a very bad example. The bot learns, it learns wrong things, it became a racist. so these are things that it will happen. And the thing is, I think Miko mentioned about Facebook. It's also a very curated environment. They sense what you like, and they provide information that they assume that you like. But that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It becomes, in your point, an echo chamber. And if you go along that line, we run the risk of arriving at very, very wrong conclusions about things and how we lead our life. That's where it becomes scary.
I actually want to talk a little bit about this issue of how far to trust AI, because I think this is quite fascinating. How many of you use Gmail? Yeah. Okay, quite a lot of users. How about Google Translate? All right, okay. So Gmail uses AI already in trying to determine what kind of incoming emails should be filtered out as spam, or other things such as promotions and whatnot. Google Translate also runs on an AI platform. The language that you input is first translated to a language that was developed by this Google Translate AI. This is entirely novel. It was fully developed by the AI. And that is used as an intermediary before the Google Translate platform then translates that into the output language. Okay, so there is an AI-developed intermediary language that sits in between. Google has allowed that to continue to run because it's effective, but do they understand what the intermediary language is, how it works? Not entirely. And I raise this point because I think what it demonstrates is that we already trust and rely on AI to some degree, right? And in certain contexts. And that brings me to, I think, my main point, which is that I think the question of whether or not to trust AI is really contextual. Would you trust it with your email? Probably. Would you trust it with an automated car? Maybe to some degree. Would you trust it to, for example, keep you a certain distance from the vehicles around you? Probably. Would you trust it to interpret a child playing at the side of the road as a potential risk? That's a question mark, right? And then how far would you trust an AI that's developed for military applications? So I think this issue is very heavily dependent on context. In many jurisdictions, in Singapore, in the EU, personal data, or rather individuals have very clear rights over personal data, regardless of whether third parties collect it or use it and whatever purposes those are for. So that's regulated. But I think where AI fits into this piece of the puzzle is that, and it's not just AI, but it's any platform that can basically collate all these disparate pieces of data about you and form a larger picture that can identify you, right? I think that's where this risk lies. In Singapore, the legal position is that personal data is any kind of data that identifies you, either on its own or in conjunction with other types of data that the organization has access to. So if you're in an organization that collects lots of different types of data and you have a system that can just bring everything into one coherent picture of who you are, then that's all personal data. And the organization becomes liable for complying with your privacy laws.
Feng-Yuan, yeah.
I'm just gonna talk about this in greater detail because I was at a panel yesterday on privacy and AI. AI doesn't need personally identifiable information to train the models. Use the example of translation, right? I mean, the AI algorithm that's translating is using stuff that's all on the internet, on the United Nations and all that. It doesn't have to train on the corpus of language and say, hey, that's what Dharma or Feng-Yuan said. So I think one important conceptual distinction is that actually for AI algorithms to train on, it doesn't need to know who exactly was there. Now, I take your point that as you aggregate more data together, there's a risk of re-identifying the person. There's only one person, of a certain age and all that. But that, in a sense, has nothing to do with AI. It's to do with data fusion or data combination. So I just want to be kind of careful here that we don't put all the scary technology terms in one bucket, privacy, AI, and say, well, actually, they're all the same thing. At the end of the day, you should see AI as any other kind of technology that improves your lives in kind of simple ways. I mean, Gmail is one. Now there's autocomplete. As I type the sentence, it kind of auto-completes for me.
A bit annoying that sometimes.
Yeah, so some people don't like it. And it's not, I don't think you'll see AI as a big AI system, but it's more little features in your app. When you go to Facebook, it helps you tag your friends. Again, maybe that's annoying or that's creepy. So I don't think there's going to be this kind of galactic system that injects all, it's more simply when people develop features, they're going to try and personalize it more using your data. And I think for the layperson, what's important is that you understand how your data is being logged and used. And I think a lot of people use technology without understanding what's going on. Mysteriously, suddenly, you're getting recommendations. You must have been listening in on me. And I think that's the important thing for the layman to understand, that you do have certain, under the PDPA, there are certain precautions that need to be taken, consent needs to be given, and you need to be aware of how your data is being used.